So pivot is kind of like the theme of this conversation, particularly in the energy sector. So a lot of pivoting away from solar, a lot of pivoting towards nuclear and hydroelectric. So with some of these pivots, if you will, are there emerging risks environmentally to what we're being moved to?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yes. So I think here's the concern. I'm going to stay away from carbon.
Okay.
Because it is such a hotly debated topic. And, I don't know if the format or the length of this podcast.
There's not enough time in the world for that conversation.
Correct. Right.
Yeah, I get it.
But here's what I'll do. I'll talk about hard materials.
Okay.
Here's a great visual. I have kids. Have you ever seen the movie WALL-E, where it talks about, consumption patterns and how eventually you've got all of these people on Earth are sitting on mounds of trash until they, all get on, floating platforms and get above it. One of the things that I think has brought concern is with the massive proliferation of installation of solar panels. What do you do with the waste? Because there is a usable life to those panels, just like everything. Eventually you're going to have to dispose of those panels, and there are environmental concerns. There are metals included in those solar panels, and at this point, we don't have, efficient and effective technology to extract them and truly recycle them, reuse, or dispose of them. So, what happens is they end up just kind of getting, dumped into landfills. So that's definitely a concern. You've also got sourcing of those metals that can be, pretty damaging to the environment. So if we're talking about solar in particular, while there's definitely benefits, it's not the one solution to fix everything. We really do need a more measured approach with a good diversification of sourcing our energy. So with that kind of prelude, I want to talk about what I am seeing an increased frequency of submissions coming in, and it's research and development of nuclear energy, and in particular mobile nuclear units. And what's nice about this source of energy is you can produce large quantities of energy. And if some of these companies that have recently been in the news, in fact, one of them in particular was recently in the White House meeting with President Trump, they have invested heavily and bet heavily on the future of these small micro nuclear generation units. What's nice about them is they're mobile. You can take them to some of the largest energy consumption facilities that we're seeing now, which are these data centers. And the increase in the number of data centers we're seeing is being driven basically because of the way we live our lives, because we have a massive increase in our consumption pattern with electricity, with everybody's mobile devices, with frankly the increase in the use of AI. This uses massive quantities of energy, and we're going to need a way to satisfy that demand. So we are seeing in my desk, we're seeing an increase in the number of nuclear R&D facilities, as well as enrichment companies performing enrichment. Lauren, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I want to stick with that theme of pivoting, Catherine, and talk about kind of what Keena was mentioning, what we're seeing in the marketplace from an insurance perspective, and particularly with nuclear. It's interesting the timing of this conversation, and what Keena was talking about is I actually have a submission in hand that we're working on right now where the client was drilling water wells, and now they're pivoting to drilling for uranium. And it's going to be used in these nuclear modules. And, interesting timing about that, but it's a very different exposure. And so it's different markets will write it. So, we had to pivot the insured from sort of group A of insurance companies, and now we're looking at group B list of insurance companies because A and B don't offer coverage for the same exposures. And then even on a more global level there, why are companies switching to drilling for uranium? Because the administration is giving more support financially through tax credits and incentives and grants for companies to source that material locally instead of being dependent on the global market, instead of importing it from Asia, Asian countries, Europe, Africa, wherever else it might be coming from. And that's one of the things that we're finding in this big, beautiful bill is there's incentive, there's push, there's more demand to source those materials locally, and they're disincentivizing people and companies from bringing those materials in from overseas, from other countries. And there's a handful of particular company or countries that they don't want those materials sourced from. And that's a different podcast that can get into those countries. But just in general, this pivot is because I think in part of this administration's desire to do things for ourselves here in this country. And whether you agree with that or not on a global level or domestically, we are doing it. We are seeing companies pivot immediately, and there is more support as that pendulum shifts from maybe going fully green, fully renewable. We're swinging back towards more support for oil and gas, more support for the natural gas industry. And my question going forward is, how are the states going to respond? How is California going to respond to the federal government saying we want more oil and gas production and less renewable? How is New York going to respond? Texas, Kansas? Everybody's got their own nuances about energy production.